Welcome to the Lowdown. This is an AI-generated open-source news summary for general informational awareness. This product is not intended for use as official intelligence. The views expressed here are solely those of the cited authors and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Department of War, the United States Air Force, or any other U.S. government agency.
Right. So to give you the bottom line up front for today's operating environment, we're seeing the fundamental nature of global power projection fracture across multiple theaters. We are currently tracking China distributing hypersonic lethality and executing maritime coercion while simultaneously monitoring unprecedented non-state drone warfare and direct state-on-state missile strikes in the Middle East. Concurrently, Russia is attempting to mask severe domestic recruitment shortfalls by relying heavily on devastating aerial glide bomb campaigns in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and stepping out of the formal briefing for a second, when we try to picture a global conflict, for you listening, we usually think of it like this giant game of Risk, right?
Absolutely, like the plastic armies.
Yeah, exactly. You've got little plastic armies on the borders, a distinct red side, a distinct blue side. It's clean. But when you look at these military escalations unfolding globally right now, it's July 2026, it suddenly feels like somebody just completely flipped the game board over.
Yeah, the lines are they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's the absolute definition of a fractured, highly volatile environment.
Right. And today we're really digging into how this is happening everywhere at once. We're looking at reporting from the War Zone, the Institute for the Study of War, Al Jazeera, AP News. And it's wild because
the geography doesn't even matter as much anymore.
Exactly. We've got China's hypersonic missiles, an FPV drone war in the Middle East, the U.S. and Iran literally trading missiles, and then Russia's tactics in Ukraine.
And, while these are all geographically separated, they collectively represent this massive tectonic shift. And it's going to hit global trade, energy prices.
It has hit your wallet.
Yeah, exactly. The foundation of international security is shifting.
So, okay, let's start in the Pacific. Because strategic posturing, it isn't just about showing up in contested waters anymore. It's about what you bring with you.
The payload, right.
Yeah. The War Zone published this really detailed defense analysis on China's naval structure, specifically involving their YJ-20 hypersonic anti-ship missile. What is actually going on with their destroyer fleet?
So they are drastically expanding their launch capabilities. Historically, the People's Liberation Army Navy, the Plan, they only fielded this specific hypersonic missile on their Type 055 super destroyers.
And those are the really big ones.
Massive, highly advanced. They have 112 vertical launch cells. But the catch is China only has about 10 of those in operational service.
Okay, 10.
Right. But now they are integrating the YJ-20 onto the Type 052D destroyer.
Which is the slightly smaller ship, the Luoyang III class.
Exactly. It has 64 launch cells instead of 112. But the numbers game completely flips here because they have roughly 35 of those 052Ds in service right now.
Wow. So, I mean, it feels like taking an elite, highly specialized sniper rifle that you only gave to a few special forces guys.
Right.
And suddenly you manufacture enough to just hand one out to every single squad in the regular infantry.
That's a perfect analogy. The overall lethality of the force just skyrockets because the YJ-20 is, well, it's incredibly difficult to defend against.
Because of the speed?
Partially, yeah. On paper, it cruises at Mach 6 or higher, and then it accelerates to Mach 10 in its terminal phase.
Mach 10, that's insanely fast.
It is. And the range is estimated at 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers.
Wait, so that's well over 600 miles.
Yeah, over 620 miles. But it's not just the speed, it's the trajectory.
Right, because a normal ballistic missile is predictable, like throwing a football. Once it leaves the quarterback's hand, the computer knows exactly where it's going to land.
Exactly, which gives air defense a chance. But the YJ-20 uses an aeroballistic or boost glide trajectory.
So what does that actually mean for the ship trying to shoot it down?
It means the missile can maneuver in the upper atmosphere. Instead of that predictable arc, it executes these abrupt changes in altitude and direction.
Well, going Mach 10.
Right. Aerospace engineers call it a porpoising or skip glide maneuver. It makes traditional intercept math totally useless. By the time the ship's radar locks on, the crew has, mere seconds to make a decision.
So if China has 35 ships that can launch maneuvering Mach 10 missiles from over 1,000 kilometers away, does the U.S. Navy just have to completely redraw its safe operating zones?
They have to completely rethink their anti-access and area denial posture, their A-to-D. The Pentagon's 2025 report already said China has the leading hypersonic arsenal. This just pushes the contested zone incredibly deep into the Western Pacific. Opposing carriers have to stay way, way back.
So that's the high-end, multi-million-dollar tech. But Al Jazeera reported that closer to home, China is using totally different, kind of subtle assets to physically box in Taiwan.
Yeah, through June and July, they significantly expanded maritime patrols. But it's the geography that matters.
They moved east, right?
Yeah. Yes. Historically, patrols were in the Taiwan Strait. Moving east signals an intent to completely encircle the island, isolating it from the open Pacific. And they're doing it under this banner of special maritime law enforcement.
Which, I have to push back on that term, law enforcement. Taiwan reported 55 sightings in June alone, up from 30 in May. They're down near the Pratas Islands. To me, this is like your neighbor slowly building a massive fence around your house.
Just putting up posts, yeah.
Right. And they're smiling, claiming they're just doing some light yard work. But aren't they basically running a slow-motion dress rehearsal for a full blockade?
It's the administrative groundwork for a quarantine. Because look at who's doing it. It's China's Coast Guard and Maritime Safety Administration.
Yeah, it sounds civilian.
To Western ears, yes. But China's Coast Guard is part of the People's Armed Police. It answers directly to the Central Military Commission. It is a military entity painted white.
And they are hailing commercial ships on the radio asking where they're going?
Which hits Taiwan's biggest vulnerability. They import almost all their energy, mostly LNG. By getting captains used to answering Chinese authorities east of Taiwan, they set a precedent. Today, it's a radio check. Tomorrow, they physically board a ship for a safety inspection.
And Beijing is claiming this is just about Japan-Philippines boundary talks, but nobody is buying it.
Yeah.
The UK, Germany, France issued a joint statement, and the U.S. Secretary of State condemned it.
Yeah, the international community sees right through the yard work excuse.
Okay, so we've got hypersonic fleets and slow-motion blockades, but pivoting to the Middle East, it's terrifying because you don't even need millions of dollars to up into military anymore.
Not at all.
The Institute for the Study of War detailed this massive tactical pivot by Hezbollah between March and June. They're relying heavily on tactical first-person view, or FPV drones.
It's a profound shift in doctrine. For decades, Hezbollah focused on heavy rockets and ballistic missiles to deter Israel. But when Israel invaded recently, that traditional strategy...
It just didn't work.
It failed to halt the IDF's ground maneuvers. Plus, they lost smuggling routes through Syria.
So they pivoted to these off-the-shelf toys, like literally commercial quadcopters you'd see teenagers racing in a park.
Exactly. Strap explosives to them, throw on some VR goggles, and fly them manually into targets.
And it's highly lethal. ISW noted that these drones caused the majority of IDF deaths in Lebanon between the mid-April ceasefire and mid-June.
Because it bypasses modern defenses. A tank like the Israeli Merkava has amazing active protection systems, but they're designed for horizontal threats, anti-tank missiles coming at them.
Not a drone dropping vertically into a hatch.
Right, or flying directly into a bunker. And Hezbollah is doing this specifically to maximize Israeli casualties and break domestic political will.
But the sources also say Hezbollah hasn't really perfected this yet.
No, they're quite rudimentary right now.
Yeah, they use decentralized cells. They swarm static outposts with maybe 3 drones at a time, like that July 28th attack on an IDF engineering vehicle near the Ali Al-Tahrir tunnel. Very step-by-step. Send a scout drone, find a target, get approval, send the attack drone.
Right. They are not executing fluid combined arms maneuvers. They aren't integrating them with moving infantry yet.
It honestly reminds me of the early days of the internet. Like, we knew the tech was powerful, but we were on dial-up looking at basic text pages.
Yeah.
So what happens when they get broadband? What happens when Hezbollah actually masters the playbook and integrates these drones dynamically with ground forces?
That scenario flattens the advantage of a modern military. If they master that, traditional armored columns are obsolete unless they totally overhaul their defenses. You'd need electronic warfare jammers on every single vehicle. Kinetic interceptors for every squad. It changes everything.
And all this is happening against a backdrop of direct escalation. The U.S. and Iran are directly exchanging fire. AP News and ISW reported that after a really brief 4-day pause for talks in late July, it just exploded.
Yeah, the pause collapsed entirely. On July 28th, Iran launched what U.S. Central Command called a surprise attack on U.S. forces at the Muwaffaq Salti Airbase in Jordan.
The Jordanians intercepted 5 ballistic missiles, right?
They did. And intelligence suggests Iran's goal was to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz and inflict enough pain to just erode Washington's willingness to stay in the conflict.
But the U.S. and Saudi Arabia hit back hard that same day. A heavy wave of strikes targeting Iran-backed militia sites in Iraq. And they specifically hit along the Iran-Iraq border on the Arabian pilgrimage routes.
Right.
Why hit a religious pilgrimage route?
It's all about logistics and cover. Regional intelligence says Iran heavily uses the civilian movement during those pilgrimages to covertly move weapons and military advisors into Iraq.
So they were severing the supply line.
Exactly. And the strikes were highly lethal. They killed at least 20 militia fighters and 6 Iranian advisors.
Including 4 IRGC Quds Force officers in the Damietta province. And the Quds Force is their elite unconventional warfare branch. But they didn't just hit Iraq. They struck Iran's Qeshm Island.
Which is all about geography. Qeshm sits right in the strategic bottleneck of the Strait of Hormuz. Hitting it sends a very clear message about who controls the choke points.
But it's also incredibly tragic. The IRGC reported 3 personnel killed, but Iranian media said a civilian couple and their 2-year-old child died in those strikes on Qeshm.
Yeah, it highlights the severe human cost of this escalation.
And it's spreading. The Houthis in Yemen are threatening Saudi targets again to break a blockade. A U.S.-owned tanker got hit by a drone in Egypt just a day later. It feels like a high-stakes bidding war where both sides are going bankrupt. Did Iran miscalculate here?
Almost certainly.
By striking during a diplomatic pause.
Yeah. They were trying to dictate the terms of engagement. But launching ballistic missiles at a coalition airbase, you guarantee a severe kinetic response. They completely collapsed any diplomatic off-ramp that might have existed.
Which brings us to our final theater today, Eastern Europe. We've talked about hypersonics and drone swarms, but Ukraine is just this grueling war of attrition.
Yeah, it's very different.
And ISW reporting shows Russia is having to rely almost entirely on sheer explosive volume to cover up some massive structural weaknesses.
Right. They are heavily leveraging their superior aviation, specifically these devastating glide bombs, to enable infantry to advance in places like Veliki Burlak, Sloviansk, and especially around Kostiantynivka.
For people following the tactical side, how do these glide bombs actually change infantry combat? Because they're basically just dumb iron bombs retrofitted with wings, right?
There's wings and basic guidance, yeah. But they change the mechanics by erasing the need for traditional artillery or urban combat. Russian jets drop them from dozens of miles away.
So they're safely outside Ukrainian air defense range.
Exactly. And the bombs glide in with terrifying explosive yields. They just completely obliterate concrete bunkers and trenches. Russian infantry can essentially just walk into the ruins.
But the reality on the ground, even with that advantage, the ISW notes, Russia hasn't actually seized Kostiantynivka yet.
Right.
Ukraine is fighting back with long-range strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, Russia threw 60 drones at Ukraine in a single night, just trying to overwhelm them. But the most interesting part of the ISW report to me wasn't the battlefield. It was the Russian home front.
The recruitment crisis.
Yes. The Kremlin is desperately trying to deny they're prepping for a compulsory draft. They want to rely on volunteers, but they're falling way short of their 2026 targets.
The pipeline is drying up.
And at the exact same time, they're setting up the technical framework to completely block Telegram and deny open internet access in Russia. Is that move basically a direct admission that the volunteer system has failed?
It points directly to regime survival. Telegram is one of the few places Russians can still see unfiltered news and the actual horrific body count of this war.
Right. So they're pulling the blinds down.
Exactly. If the Kremlin is willing to face the public anger of shutting down the internet, it tells you they view the manpower shortage and the truth about it as a far bigger threat. They need to force ordinary citizens to the front, and they have to control the information space before they issue those orders.
Wow. Okay, so synthesizing all of this, a really clear theme emerges here about how power is projected now.
Yeah, it's fracturing across the board. China is taking high-end hypersonics and distributing them across the regular fleet while using low-end Coast Guard ships to quietly encircle Taiwan.
Right.
Iran and Hezbollah are proving you don't need million-dollar weapons to bleed an advanced military. Cheap swarming drones work just fine. And Russia is having to use air superiority and total information blackouts just to hide the fact that they are running out of men.
Which brings me back to the start. The game board is flipped. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought. Look at the financial math of what we just talked about.
Well, economics are wild.
Right. If a $2,000 FPV drone flown by a teenager wearing VR goggles can completely gut a multi-million-dollar tank, and if groups like the Houthis are seriously pondering charging international shipping companies literal tolls to go through the Red Sea, are we entering an era where the financial math of war is just permanently broken? It's not about who has the better weapons anymore.
No, it's about who can afford to stay in the fight. It is a war of economic attrition just as much as kinetic attrition.
Yeah. The plastic pieces on the risk board, they just don't all cost the same anymore. And some of these players are figuring out how to play the game on pennies. So, to officially sign off here, operationally, we are seeing a definitive shift toward distributed, asymmetric, and economically disruptive warfare models across all major theaters. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, and we will catch you next time.